That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun hung low over Joint Base Balad, casting long shadows across the dusty parade ground. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at attention in her desert camouflage uniform, the fabric stiff against her skin from the overnight dew. Her boots, polished to a mirror shine, sank slightly into the packed earth as the company formed up. The air carried the sharp tang of jet fuel from the nearby airstrip, mingling with the faint scent of sagebrush carried on the wind. At her side, Rex, her German Shepherd K9 partner, sat rigid, his black and tan coat gleaming under the rising light. His ears twitched at the distant hum of a Black Hawk warming its engines, but his eyes remained fixed forward, mirroring Elena's disciplined focus. "Company, attention!" The command barked from Major Harlan's position at the front, his voice cutting through the morning quiet like a rifle crack. Boots shifted in unison, heels snapping against the ground. Eleanor felt the subtle vibration through her soles, the collective discipline, a rhythm she'd known since her days at Fort Bragg. As a K9 handler with the 59th Military Police Company, she was no stranger to the chain of command. Ranks were etched into every interaction, salutes exchanged with precision, orders delivered without question. Rex's training mirrored that structure, commands in German, responses immediate and unyielding. He was her shadow, her extension, bonded through countless hours in the field detecting explosives, narcotics, and the unseen threats that lurked in Iraq's volatile sands. The training exercise was standard protocol, a simulated perimeter sweep around the base's outer fences, testing detection capabilities amid mock insurgent activity. Elena and Rex were slotted for the eastern sector, a stretch of razor wire and patrol roads flanked by date palms. Major Harlan paced the line, his clipboard clutched like a weapon. "Vasquez!" he called, his gaze lingering on her a beat too long. She snapped to, saluting crisply. "Your dog's cleared for this run. Keep it tight, no deviations. We move as a unit." "Yes, sir," Elena replied, her voice steady, though she noted the undercurrent in his tone. Harlan had never hidden his skepticism toward female handlers in the unit. "Women and dogs," he'd once muttered in the mess hall, loud enough for ears to catch, both too emotional for the real work. But Elena had earned her place through sheer competence, 3 deployments, a commendation for sniffing out an IED cache in Fallujah. Rex's nose didn't discriminate. Neither did she. The company broke into squads, rotors thumping overhead as spotter helicopters lifted off. Elena clipped Rex's leash, the leather worn smooth from use, and they fell in with the patrol. The ground crunched underfoot, loose gravel shifting with each step. Radio chatter filled her earpiece. "Alpha team advancing to grid Echo 7, eyes sharp." She murmured to Rex in low German, "Such, search." And he moved ahead, nose to the wind, tail low and alert. The bond between them was silent, profound, a trust forged in the quiet hours of kennel drills and night watches. He sensed her tension before she voiced it, pressing his flank against her leg as they approached the fence line. Halfway through the sweep, the routine fractured. Sergeant Mills, a burly infantryman from the flanking squad, veered close during a radioed halt. His team had been running interference drills, but now he lingered, smirking under his helmet. "Vasquez, you sure that mutt's up to it?" "Heard he whimpered last week during the heat sim." The words landed like a poorly aimed shot, drawing chuckles from his men. Elena's jaw tightened, but she kept her eyes on the horizon. Mockery wasn't new. It was the underbelly of the barracks, testing resolve without ever breaking protocol. "Focus on your sector, Sergeant," she said evenly, unclipping Rex's leash for the free search phase. The dog ranged ahead, paws silent on the dirt, pausing to sniff a cluster of rocks near the wire. Mills didn't back off. "Acting alone out here? Bold, but if that dog misses something, it's on you. No backup for the lone wolf. His squad snorted again, the sound carrying on the breeze. Elena felt the heat rise in her chest, not from the sun, but from the implication. Her gender, her methods, always under scrutiny. Rex returned, sitting at her feet, his dark eyes locking onto hers, as if to say, "Steady." Major Harlan's voice crackled over the net. "All teams, hold position. Possible contact at northern fence." The patrol tensed, weapons at low ready. Elena scanned the palms, the wind whispering through their fronds like a warning. But the contact was a false alarm. A stray camel, spooked by the chopper noise. As the all-clear sounded, Mills clapped her on the shoulder too hard. "See, even your dog's jumpy. Stick to the pack next time." She shrugged him off, her hand instinctively dropping to Rex's head. The touch grounded her, his fur warm and coarse under her fingers. Back at the assembly point, the company debriefed under the mess tent's canvas flaps. Harlan reviewed the logs, praising the infantry sweeps, but glossing over K9 contributions. Elena stood silent, Rex at heel, as the major dismissed them. "Good work overall. Vasquez, report to my office after chow. Dog needs a full eval." The words hung heavy. Evaluations were routine, but the edge in Harlan's voice suggested more. As the troops dispersed, boots echoing on the concrete paths, Elena led Rex toward the kennels. The base stirred to life, cooks clanging pots in the galley, a Humvee rumbling past with its canvas sides flapping. She knelt to unbuckle his harness, murmuring, "Gut gemacht, good job." Rex licked her hand once, a rare affection, his breath warm against her skin. In the kennel block, the air was cooler. Laced with the earthy scent of hay and wet fur from the morning wash, Elena filled his water bowl, watching him lap steadily. The mockery from Mills replayed in her mind, a small fracture in the unit's armor. But it was Harlan's summons that gnawed deeper, an unspoken challenge to her place here. She straightened, adjusting her beret in the small mirror by the door. The chain of command demanded obedience, yet something stirred within her, a quiet resolve. Rex sensed it, whining softly as she turned to leave. Outside, the sun climbed higher, baking the ground. Eleanor reported to Harlan's office as ordered, the door creaking open to reveal stacks of reports and a map pinned with red flags marking recent incidents. He didn't look up from his desk. "Sit. Tell me about the dog's performance today." She did, detailing the sweep paths and alerts, her voice measured. But as she spoke, Harlan's eyes narrowed. "Independent runs like that, risky. We operate as a team, Captain, not solo acts." The implication settled like dust. Elena met his gaze. "Understood, sir, but Rex detected 3 potential anomalies." Protocol followed. Harlan leaned back, tenting his fingers. "Protocol's one thing. Results are another. There's chatter from higher up. Embassy security's requesting enhanced sweeps for a VIP visit next week. If your dog's off, it falls on all of us." She nodded, saluting as she left, the weight of his words pressing down. Back in the barracks, the afternoon heat shimmered off the metal roofs. Eleanor sat on her bunk, Rex curling at her feet, his head on her boot. The mockery, the summons, it all pointed to a test brewing, one that would demand more than routine obedience. Little did she know, the real defiance was just beginning, sparked by a shadow moving beyond the fences. The afternoon sun beat down on Joint Base Balad like a relentless interrogator, turning the asphalt paths into shimmering mirages. Captain Elena Vasquez strode back from Major Harlan's office, her boots striking the concrete with measured precision. Rex trotted at her heel, his paws padding softly against the heat-radiating ground, tongue lolling slightly as he adjusted to the rising temperature. The base hummed with midday activity, a convoy of supply trucks rumbling toward the motor pool, their tires kicking up fine dust that clung to everything. The distant crackle of small arms fire from the range, punctuated by barked corrections from instructors. Elena's mind replayed Harlan's words. Independent runs like that, risky, a subtle erosion of her authority, masked as concern for the unit. She detoured to the kennel block first, the chain-link enclosure a sanctuary amid the sprawl. Inside, the air was thick with the mingled scents of kibble and disinfectant, shadows pooling under the metal roof. Eleanor filled Rex's bowl with fresh water from the spigot, the cool stream splashing against the sides. He drank deeply, then nudged her knee with his muzzle, a silent check-in that eased the knot in her chest. "Ausruhen," she murmured, "rest." And he settled onto his bedding, eyes half closed but alert. Their bond was the one constant in this world of shifting alliances. Rex didn't question her methods, only followed her lead with unwavering trust. By the time she reached the mess hall for chow, the midday rush had thinned. Soldiers clustered at long tables under whirring fans, the clatter of trays and low murmur of conversation filling the space. Elena collected her meal, grilled chicken, rice and a wedge of flatbread, and scanned for a quiet spot. But Sergeant Mills was already there, flanked by his squad from the morning patrol, their helmets stacked nearby like trophies. He spotted her immediately, waving her over with exaggerated camaraderie. "Vasquez, join the winner's table. Your dog's tails got us through the heat." The invitation carried an edge, and she hesitated, but protocol favored unity. She sat at the end, nodding to the group. Mills leaned in, his fork pausing mid-air. "Seriously, though, solo sweeps. That's handler bravado. Last deployment, I saw a dog team get pinned because they strayed. You pulling that with the embassy gig coming up? Harlan's right to flag it." His tone was casual, but the words drew nods from the others, a ripple of agreement that isolated her further. One private, a young recruit with fresh ink on his forearm, added, "Yeah, ma'am. No offense, but K9 support. Infantry takes the heat." Eleanor kept her expression neutral, chewing slowly as the rice stuck in her throat. "Results matter more than formation, Sergeant. Rex cleared 3 grids clean this morning. Embassy security knows that." She didn't rise to the bait. Emotion had no place in these exchanges, but Mills pressed on, his voice dropping conspiratorially. "Embassy, huh? Heard they're picky. VIP from state, some diplomat tour. If your mutt slips, it's not just a bad day, it's headlines. And you're the face." Laughter followed, subdued but pointed, as trays scraped back and chairs shifted. She finished her meal in silence, the mockery settling like grit in her boots. Rising to bus her tray, Elena caught a glimpse of Major Harlan across the hall, conversing with the company XO. His eyes flicked her way, then away, watching, always watching. Outside, the heat wave distorted the horizon, and she headed to the operations tent for the afternoon briefing. The canvas structure flapped gently in the breeze, its interior dim and cooled by portable units, humming steadily. Maps sprawled across folding tables marked with colored pins denoting patrol routes and threat assessments. Lieutenant Reyes, the ops officer, stood at the front, projector light casting blue glows on his face. "Listen up," Reyes began, his voice cutting through the rustle of gear. "VIP arrival in 5 days, ambassador's detail from Baghdad, enhanced sweeps mandatory, K9 on point for the perimeter, infantry backup. No gaps." Elena took her seat near the front, notebook open, as he detailed the itinerary. Motorcade entry at dawn, briefings in the secure annex, departure by dusk. Her role was clear, Rex leading the initial scent detection along the access roads, verifying no hidden threats in the vehicles or grounds. Harlan contributed from the side, his input crisp. Team integrity first. No lone elements. Vasquez, coordinate with Mills's squad. The assignment landed heavier than expected. Coordinating meant yielding ground, her independent style curtailed under the guise of unity. As the briefing wrapped, soldiers filed out, radios chirping with follow-up tasks. Elena lingered, approaching Reyes. "Sir, Rex's protocols are optimized for solo detection. Pairing might dilute efficiency." Reyes glanced at his watch, then met her eyes. Understood, Captain. But Harlan's call. Embassies pushing for zero risk. Adapt or brief, higher. She saluted and exited, the canvas parting to reveal the glaring sun. The walk to the training yard felt longer, each step echoing the internal conflict. Duty demanded adaptation. Her conscience whispered of Rex's precision, honed without interference. In the yard, a mock perimeter setup awaited. Barriers of sandbags and simulated wire. Volunteers planting decoy scents for practice. Mills's squad was already there, setting up, their banter carrying on the wind. Look sharp, boys. Don't want the dog show stealing our thunder. Elena harnessed Rex, the leather straps clicking into place. Such, she commanded softly, and he moved forward, nose working the air currents. They ran the drill flawlessly at first. Rex, alerting to a buried packet of simulated explosive residue, sitting point with a low whine. But as Mills's team integrated, their movements disrupted the flow. A boot scuffing near a marker, voices overlapping her commands. Rex hesitated, ears flicking back, sensing the chaos. On the second pass, he missed a secondary decoy, circling instead toward the interference. "See," Mills called out, halting the run. "Told you, too many cooks, dogs confused." The squad gathered, Harlan arriving just in time to observe. His nod was subtle, approving. "Reset and pair tighter, Vasquez. Lesson learned." Elena knelt by Rex, stroking his flank to steady him. "Fine, good boy," she whispered, though frustration simmered. The dog's trust in her was absolute. Forcing this hybrid approach felt like a betrayal, small but insidious. As the sun dipped toward evening, casting orange hues over the yard, Elena led Rex back to the kennels. The base quieted, evening chow calls echoing, lights flickering on in the barracks. She groomed him methodically, brushing out the dust from his coat, the rhythmic strokes a meditation. Harlan's oversight, Mill's barbs. They weren't isolated. They formed a pattern, testing her resolve before the embassy detail. But in the dim light, with Rex's steady breathing beside her, Eleanor felt the stir of defiance. Obedience had its place, but so did integrity. The letter from the embassy, when it came, would shift everything, though none of them knew it yet. The evening shadows stretched long across Joint Base Ballard as Captain Elena Vasquez secured the kennel door with a soft click, the metal latch echoing faintly in the cooling air. Rex's silhouette was visible through the wire mesh, his head lifting at her retreating footsteps before settling back down. The base transitioned into its nocturnal rhythm, floodlights humming to life along the perimeter, the low growl of generators underscoring the distant call to prayer from a nearby village. Elena's uniform clung slightly from the day's sweat, the fabric chafing as she made her way to the officers' quarters. Harlan's directive to pair tighter gnawed at her, a procedural knot that threatened the precision she'd built with Rex over years of shared deployments. In her small room, the air was still, broken only by the whir of a desk fan pushing stale air across stacked reports and a single-frame photo of her commissioning ceremony. She changed into a fresh duty shirt, the cotton crisp against her skin, and reviewed the embassy protocols on her tablet. The document outlined stringent requirements, layered security, redundant checks, K-9 verification mandatory for all entry points. Independence wasn't mentioned, only integration into the broader team. Selena set the device aside, staring at the concrete wall where faint cracks spiderwebbed from past mortar impacts. Obeying meant diluting Rex's edge. Defying it risked her command, her career. The moral tension coiled tighter, duty pulling one way, conscience the other. Morning broke with the familiar reveille blare, jolting the base awake. Elena rose before dawn, slipping into the kennels under a sky bruised with purple hues. Rex greeted her with a muffled woof, tail thumping against the straw. She harnessed him efficiently, the routine a balm. checking his paws for cracks, adjusting the vest's fit over his broad chest. "Voran, forward," she said, and they stepped into the pre-light chill, frost-kissed dew crunching under their boots and paws. The training yard awaited, already stirring with early arrivals, Mills's squad rigging barriers, their laughter carrying like stray rounds. Major Harlan arrived shortly after, clipboard in hand, his boots polished despite the dust. "Vasquez, Mills, joint run today, full integration for the embassy sim." His tone brooked no debate, eyes scanning the setup, mock checkpoints mimicking the motorcade route, decoy scents planted in vehicle mock-ups and soil depressions. Elena nodded, clipping Rex's lead shorter than usual to keep him in formation. The squad formed up, weapons slung low, radios tuned to the ops frequency. "Move out," Harlan ordered, and the group advanced, boots sinking in a disciplined cadence across the gravel. The sim began smoothly, infantry sweeping ahead, clearing visual threats, while Eleanor directed Rex along the flanks. His nose worked methodically, pausing at a tire stack where a faint chemical trace lingered. "Sits! Sit!" she commanded, and he alerted, paw tapping the ground. Mills acknowledged with a curt radio call. "K9 hit. Checking." We said they uncovered the decoy, a packet of simulated C4 residue, efficiently. Harlan's voice crackled approval. "Solid work. Maintain spacing." But as they progressed to the inner perimeter, the cracks appeared. Mills' team fanned wider than briefed, their movements kicking up dust that muddied the air currents Rex relied on. A private's boot grazed a marker, scattering scent particles prematurely. Rex faltered, circling a barrier twice before whining low, his focus fracturing. Elena felt the pull on the leash, her commands sharper. "Such, Rex, concentriere." But the interference mounted. Mills called a halt to reposition, his voice booming. "Dog's lagging. Tighten up, Vasquez. Don't let him freelance." The squad shifted, bodies blocking sightlines, and in the reset, Rex missed a secondary plant hidden in a drainage grate. Harlan halted the exercise, his face tightening under the brim of his cap. "Report," he demanded, striding forward. Elena knelt by Rex, hands steady on his collar as she detailed the alert sequence. "Interference disrupted the flow, sir. Scent dilution from the reposition." Mills interjected before Harlan could respond. "With respect, ma'am, that's the point of team play. Solo dog's fine for open field, but here it's chaos. Embassy won't tolerate misses." The squad murmured agreement, helmets nodding in the rising sun. Harlan's gaze lingered on Elena, weighing. "Adapt or sidelined, Captain. This isn't a solo op, dismissed for reset." The words landed like a formal reprimand, the public nature amplifying the sting. Elena unclipped Rex, leading him aside as the team reconfigured. His ears drooped slightly, mirroring her frustration, and she scratched behind them gently. "We're Schaffendas. We'll manage." But doubt crept in. These drills weren't just practice, they foreshadowed the real stakes. Word spread quickly through the base grapevine, whispers in the chow line questioning her methods, her fit in the unit. By midday, during the full company briefing in the ops tent, the tension peaked. Lieutenant Reyes projected the embassy timeline. Arrival at 0600, sweeps from 0500. K9 lead, infantry shadow, no deviations. Harlan added his layer. "Vasquez reports directly to me. Any glitches we adjust on the fly." Eyes turned her way, Mills included, his smirk barely concealed. Elena stood rigid, saluting at dismissal, but inside, the dilemma sharpened. Protocol chained her to the team, yet Rex's instincts thrived in autonomy. Denying that felt like abandoning a partner, eroding the loyalty that defined her role. Afternoon brought a classified update. The VIP was a high-level envoy from state, carrying sensitive briefings on regional alliances. Embassy security had flagged prior incidents, probes at outposts, anonymous tips of sabotage. Elena pored over the intel in the quiet of her quarters, Rex dozing at her feet, his breathing a steady anchor. The mockery from Mills, Harlan's oversight, it all converged on her choice. Obey and risk a blind spot, act alone and invite insubordination charges. As dusk fell, painting the base in amber, a runner arrived with a sealed envelope from higher command. She slit it open, scanning the contents. Preliminary embassy commendations for K9 units, her name highlighted for past contributions. But the real letter, the one that would upend everything, was still en route from Baghdad. The weight of impending decision pressed down, the base's lights flickering on like watchful eyes. Elena clipped Rex's leash for an evening walk, the cool air carrying hints of rain from distant mountains. Their steps echoed on the paths, a private rhythm amid the institutional grind. Tomorrow's final drill would force her hand, the line between duty and conscience blurring under the embassy's shadow. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. The first light of dawn filtered through the chain-link fences of Joint Base Balad, painting the training yard in muted greys. Captain Elena Vasquez arrived early, her breath visible in the crisp air as she led Rex from the kennels. The ground was still damp from an overnight mist, boots leaving faint imprints in the soft earth. Rex's paws pressed lightly, his nose already questing upward, catching the subtle shift in scents as the base stirred. Generators coughed to life in the distance, their rumble blending with the soft whir of early patrols' revving engines. Elena adjusted her harness straps, the leather creaking softly, and reviewed the final drill parameters in her mind, a full-scale embassy simulation from motorcade approach to secure handover with every anomaly planted to test response times. Major Harlan was already on site, directing the setup with clipped efficiency. Sandbag barriers mimicked entry points, and volunteer teams had buried decoys overnight, simulated explosives in vehicle undercarriages, trace narcotics along the access roads. Sergeant Mills's squad milled about, stacking gear crates and testing radios, their movements practiced but laced with the low hum of anticipation. Harlan spotted her approaching and waved her over, his face shadowed under the brim of his patrol cap. "Vasquez, we're running tight today. Rex on lead detection, but Mills shadows every step. No freelancing. Embassies watching the feeds remotely." "Yes, sir," Elena replied, her voice level as she saluted. The order chafed, a direct curb on the autonomy that had defined her successes. Rex sat at her side, his ears perked toward Harlan's voice, sensing the undercurrent of command. She could feel the Major's scrutiny, not just professional but probing. As if measuring her compliance against the unit's cohesion, Mills jogged up, wiping sweat from his brow despite the chill. "Ready to integrate, ma'am? We'll keep the dust down for your partner." His tone carried that familiar edge, respectful on the surface but underscoring the hierarchy, infantry leading, K9 following. The company formed up as the sun crested the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard. Lieutenant Reyes called the start. "Begin simulation. Motorcade inbound, grid Alpha to Delta." The group moved out in formation, boots crunching gravel in sync, radios alive with position calls. "Foxtrot team, clear at checkpoint 1. Elena unclipped Rex's short lead, allowing just enough slack for him to work the flanks while staying within arm's reach of Mills' line. "Sarch," she commanded softly in German, and Rex advanced, his body low and purposeful, nose sifting through the morning dew-laden air. The first phase unfolded without incident. Rex alerted to a decoy in a mock Humvee's wheel well, sitting sharply with a paw raised, his whine cutting through the chatter. Mills's team confirmed it swiftly, extracting the packet with gloved hands. Harlan's voice over the net. "Good hit. Proceed to inner perimeter." Praise but conditional, tied to the team's rhythm. Elena felt Rex's tension through the leash vibrations. He preferred open sweeps, unhindered by the squad's bulk. As they neared the simulated annex, A cluster of tents ringed by barriers, the interference escalated. Mills' private veered to clear a visual blind spot, his boot scuffing a shallow trench where a secondary scent had been planted. Dust billowed, diluting the trace, and Rex paused, head tilting as he recast the air. "Keep moving," Mills urged, his hand signaling the squad forward. Elena tugged the lead gently. "Water! Wait," she murmured to Rex, but the formation pressed on, voices overlapping her cues. In the confusion, Rex circled a drainage culvert twice, his tail stiffening, but the disrupted particles led him astray. He sat prematurely at an empty marker, alerting to nothing. Mills halted the line, frustration etching his face. "Missed it, Vasquez. That's a breach in sim terms. Embassy vehicle rolls right over." The squad shifted uneasily, eyes on her as Harlan strode up, his clipboard snapping against his thigh. "Break it down," Harlan ordered, his gaze fixed on Elena. She knelt beside Rex, hand steady on his flank, to calm the rapid rise and fall of his chest. "Scent interference from the reposition, sir. The trench dispersal." Mills cut in, voice rising slightly. "With all due, sir. That's the integration working. Solo, he'd chase ghosts. Teamed up, we cover the gaps." The private nodded vigorously, adding, "Dog sharp, but the field's not a kennel run." Whispers rippled through the group, the public critique amplifying the isolation. Elena met Harlan's eyes, her posture unyielding. "Rex's accuracy is 98% in controlled tests, sir. This setup compromised that." Harlan's jaw tightened, the morning light glinting off his rank insignia. "Compromised or not, this is how we operate. Embassy detail demands 0 errors, no room for what-ifs." He turned to the squad. "Reset from checkpoint 2. Vasquez, leash him shorter. Mills, tighten your flanks." Dismissal hung in the air as they dispersed, the failure logged like a scar on the exercise report. Elena led Rex to the sidelines, the dog's whine low and questioning as she offered water from her canteen. His tongue lapped steadily, but his eyes searched hers, the bond straining under the imposed limits. She stroked his ears, whispering, "Geduld, patience," though her own resolve frayed at the edges. By midday, the base's central command tent buzzed with post-drill analysis. Screens flickered with time-stamped footage, officers clustered around tables strewn with printouts. Eleanor stood at attention as Harlan debriefed, his pointer tracing the missed alert. "K9 integration exposed vulnerabilities. For the real op, we'll adjust. Rex pulls perimeter only, infantry handles vehicles." Reyes nodded, but Eleanor stepped forward, protocol be damned in the heat of the moment. "Sir, with respect, Rex's independent protocol caught the Fallujah cache last year, solo. Restricting him risks the very 0 error standard." The room stilled, Mills's scoff audible from the back. Harlan's eyes narrowed, the weight of ranks pressing down. "Your input's noted, Captain, but chain of command decides. Any further push, and it's a formal review." The threat landed softly, but its ripples spread, soldiers exchanging glances, the moral fault line cracking wider. Eleanor saluted, exiting into the baking sun, Rex's leash taut in her grip. The mockery had evolved into institutional pressure, forcing her choice. Submit and potentially fail the detail, or defy and face consequences that could end her command. Afternoon hours dragged in the kennels, the air heavy with the scent of oiled leather and damp earth. Elena groomed Rex methodically, combing burrs from his coat, each stroke a quiet rebellion against the morning's defeat. The base thrummed onward, choppers lifting off for routine patrols, their rotor wash stirring dust devils across the tarmac. She reviewed the embassy briefings alone, the documents warning of elevated threats, insider leaks, planted devices from recent probes. Rex's nose was the unit's unseen shield. Chaining it to flawed teamwork felt like negligence, a betrayal of duty wrapped in obedience. As evening fell, the base's floodlights cast stark pools of yellow on the paths. A courier jeep pulled up outside the officers' quarters, its tires crunching to a halt. The driver handed Elena a sealed diplomatic pouch, stamped from Baghdad. Her hands were steady as she broke the seal in her room, the paper rustling under the desk lamp's glow. Inside was the letter, not the routine commendation, but a direct commendation from the embassy's security chief, addressed to her by name. It detailed her prior contributions, requesting specifically that Captain Vasquez and her K-9 unit lead the upcoming sweeps in the independent capacity that has proven most effective. The words blurred the line she'd towed all day. Validation from higher than Harlan, a quiet affirmation of her methods. Eleanor folded the letter carefully, tucking it into her secure drawer. Rex lifted his head from the floor, sensing the shift in her posture. She knelt beside him, hand on his warm fur. The defiance crystallized, not reckless, but principled. Tomorrow, before the final orders, she'd present it up the chain, testing the system's flexibility. The cost loomed. Potential backlash, reshuffled roles, a career pivot. But in the dim light, with Rex's steady gaze, integrity felt like the only order worth following. The embassy's shadow lengthened, pulling the unit toward reckoning. The tension in Joint Base Balad thickened like the pre-dawn fog rolling off the Tigris as Captain Elena Vasquez made her way to the command center under a sky streaked with the first hints of pink. Her boots scraped softly against the dew-slick concrete paths, each step measured to match the disciplined cadence drilled into her since officer candidate school. Rex padded beside her, his leash clipped short for the early hour, his nails clicking faintly in rhythm with her pace. The base was hushed, save for the occasional cough of a diesel engine starting in the motor pool and the distant bark of another K-9 echoing from the far kennels. In her breast pocket, the embassy letter pressed against her uniform like a concealed sidearm, lightweight paper, but heavy with implications. She'd debated presenting it overnight, the words replaying in her mind. Captain Vasquez's independent protocols have demonstrated unparalleled efficacy in prior operations. We request their application for the upcoming detail to ensure optimal security. Signed by the Chief of Embassy Security, it bypassed Harlan's chain, a direct line from Baghdad that could either affirm her position or ignite a firestorm. Duty urged caution, protocol demanded routing through the major first, but conscience, sharpened by days of erosion, pushed her forward. Rex sensed her resolve, pressing his shoulder against her leg as they approached the low-slung command tent, its canvas sides stirring in the breeze. Inside, the air hummed with the low drone of fluorescent lights and the click of keyboards from night shift analysts. Major Harlan was already at the central table, poring over satellite imagery with Lieutenant Reyes, coffee steam rising from his mug like battlefield smoke. Sergeant Mills stood nearby, reviewing gear manifests, his broad frame casting a shadow over the maps. They looked up as Elena entered, salutes snapping crisp in the confined space. "Captain," Harlan acknowledged, his eyes narrowing slightly at Rex's presence. "Early for briefings. Something on the embassy prep?" "Yes, sir," Elena replied. Her voice steady as she extracted the letter from her pocket. She handed it over without preamble, the envelope's diplomatic seal catching the light. Harlan unfolded it slowly, his expression unchanging as he scanned the lines. Reyes leaned in, reading over his shoulder, while Mills shifted his weight, arms crossing over his chest. The tent fell quiet, broken only by the soft pant of Rex at her feet, his ears attuned to the rising undercurrents. Harlan's jaw tightened imperceptibly, the paper crinkling under his fingers. "This is unexpected." He passed it to Reyes, who murmured approval at the commendation. Mills peered closer, his brow furrowing. "Embassy pulling strings for solo runs? That's a vote of confidence, ma'am." but doesn't change the unit's SOP. The words carried a probe, testing the air before the storm. Elena met his gaze evenly. It does, if higher command endorses it, Sergeant. Rex's record speaks for itself. 98% detection in uncontrolled environments. Integration risks we've already simulated. Reyes cleared his throat, folding the letter. Valid point, Captain. This aligns with the VIP threat assessment. Isolated probes suggest sophisticated planting. Independent K9 could cover angles the team might miss. Harlan held up a hand, his posture straightening to full command height. Appreciated, but this base operates under my oversight. Embassy requests are noted, not dictates. We'll incorporate elements. Rex leads flanks, but with shadow support. No full autonomy. The refusal landed like a denied request for resupply, procedural but firm, ignoring the letter's weight. Elena felt the moral fracture widen, her hand dropping instinctively to Rex's head for grounding. Sir, the letter specifies independent capacity. Denying it could compromise the detail. The room tensed, Mills's scoff barely masked as a cough, Harlan's eyes locked on hers. The silence stretching like a standoff. Are you questioning orders, Captain? The question hung, laced with the threat of formal channels. Article 15, Review Board, a stain on her file. Before she could respond, the OPS radio crackled to life. Command, this is Embassy Liaison. Confirm receipt of our directive on Vasquez K9 protocols. Reyes snatched the handset. Confirming with clipped efficiency, the liaison's voice followed, calm and authoritative. Affirmative. Captain Vasquez to lead independent sweeps per her commendation. Major Harlan, expect IG oversight if adjustments deviate. The words rippled through the tent like a shockwave, Harlan's face paling under the tan. Mills straightened, his earlier smirk fading into uncertainty. As eyes turned to Elena, witnesses to the revelation unfolding in real time. Harlan set the letter down deliberately, his voice measured. Understood. Will comply. Provisionally. Captain, coordinate with the liaison directly. But any deviation from base protocols, and it's on record. The concession was grudging, a crack in the chain, but the public nature amplified it. Reyes nodding supportively, Mills exchanging glances with the analysts, the moment etching into the unit's collective memory. Elena saluted, clipping Rex's leash as they exited, the morning light now fully breaking, casting sharp edges on the tents and vehicles. Word spread like dust on the wind. By mid-morning chow, the mess hall buzzed with subdued chatter, soldiers glancing her way as she filled her tray, oatmeal, fruit, black coffee steaming in its cup. A cluster of infantry from Mills's squad sat nearby, their conversation dipping as she passed. One private muttered, "Heard the embassy's got her back. Solo Dog's the star now." Mills, at the table's head, shot him a look but said nothing, his fork scraping plate with unusual force. Elena took a seat alone, Rex settling under the table, his warmth a quiet anchor amid the scrutiny. The reckoning extended to the afternoon staff meeting in the briefing room, walls lined with threat boards and unit rosters. Harlan addressed the officers and NCOs, the embassy letter projected on the screen behind him, her name bolded in the text. Adjustment to embassy ops. Vasquez and K9 on independent perimeter lead, with infantry as rapid response only. This per higher directive. Murmurs rose, Reyes adding, "It's a testament to proven methods. Unit adapts." But Harlan's tone carried an undercurrent, his eyes flicking to Elena. Execution remains team-focused, no lone risks. Mills spoke up then, voice respectful but edged. "Sir, with respect, this shifts dynamics. We've drilled integration for a reason, covers blind spots." Heads nodded, the public debate forcing Harlan to elaborate. "Noted, Sergeant, but embassy intel trumps Sims. Vasquez, brief your protocols post-meeting." The exchange laid bare the fault lines, loyalty to tradition versus external validation, witnessed by the full command staff. Ripples already forming in reputations and routines. Elena led Rex to the training yard afterward, the sun high and unyielding, baking the earth into cracked patterns. They ran a solo drill, unharnessed, Rex ranging freely across the mock grids, alerting to buried decoys with unerring precision. His sit was sharp, tail low, the bond uncompromised. She noted the hits in her log, the wind carrying faint echoes of squad drills nearby, Mills's team running their own paces, glances cast her way. The letter had elevated her, but at a cost. Harlan's guarded deference masked resentment, Mills's mockery silenced but simmering. As evening cooled the base, floodlights humming on, Eleanor reviewed the adjusted op plan in her quarters. Rex curled at her feet, his breathing even. While outside, Humvees rumbled past on perimeter checks. The public affirmation from the embassy had forced a reckoning, exposing the unit's rigid edges to scrutiny. Institutional gears ground slowly. Investigation whispers from IG loomed if Harlan pushed back. But her stand had sparked the first turn toward reform. Integrity's price was isolation's edge, yet in the quiet, with Rex's loyalty unbroken, it felt like progress. The VIP detail loomed at dawn, the system's response still unfolding. The pre-dawn chill clung to Joint Base Ballard like a held breath, the air crisp with the scent of damp sand and distant diesel exhaust. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at the edge of the motor pool, her silhouette sharp against the floodlight's glow, as she fitted Rex's detection vest with practiced hands. The leather straps clicked into place, the material still cool from the night's storage. Rex shifted under her touch, his muscles taut but steady, eyes reflecting the faint light as he awaited her cue. The base stirred quietly, low voices from security teams coordinating at checkpoints. The soft rumble of idling Humvees forming the escort line, rotors of an overhead Black Hawk slicing the darkness in lazy circles. Major Harlan approached from the command tent, his boots crunching gravel with authoritative rhythm, Lieutenant Reyes and Sergeant Mills flanking him like shadows. The embassy directive had reshaped the op plan overnight. Elena's independent sweeps approved, with infantry relegated to outer cordons and rapid response. Harlan's face was a mask of professional restraint, but his salute to her carried a fractional delay. "Captain, your sector's the access road from Grid Bravo to the Annex. Full autonomy per the liaison, but report anomalies immediately, no delays." His voice was clipped, the concession evident in the way he avoided her gaze, focusing instead on the tablet in Reyes' hands, displaying the motorcade route. "Understood, sir," Elena replied, snapping a salute that echoed crisply in the quiet. Mills lingered a step behind, his helmet tucked under one arm, expression neutral, but eyes narrowed. "Good hunting, ma'am. We'll be close if the dog needs backup." The words were protocol-polished, but the undercurrent lingered, a remnant of the drill's fractures. Elena nodded once, clipping Rex's lead loosely for the initial approach. Their bond thrummed silently, years of shared silences in hostile zones, his instincts an extension of her vigilance. As the group dispersed, she murmured to Rex, "Such," and he moved forward, nose lifting to sample the breeze carrying hints of sage and engine oil. The VIP motorcade was due at 0600, the envoy's armored SUVs trailing from Baghdad under escort. Elena positioned herself at the perimeter gate, the razor wire glinting under security lamps, while Mills's squad fanned out along the flanks, their silhouettes disciplined against the horizon. Radio chatter filled her earpiece. "All stations, assets in position, ETA 20 mics." She unclipped the lead entirely, granting Rex free rein along the approach path, a stretch of packed dirt flanked by concrete barriers and sparse palms. His paws padded silently, body low as he quartered the ground methodically, pausing to sniff at tire tracks from the previous day's patrols. Eleanor followed at a measured distance, her carbine slung low, eyes scanning the tree line where shadows pooled deepest. The sun breached the horizon as the convoy crested into view, dust plumes rising behind the lead vehicle like veils. Harlan's voice crackled. "Vasquez, commence sweep, infantry hold." Elena signaled Rex forward, his pace quickening as he worked the median strip, tail rigid with focus. The motorcade slowed to a crawl, drivers' faces tense behind tinted glass. The embassy liaison, a wiry civilian in tactical vest, watching from the trailing command SUV. Rex veered toward a drainage culvert near the gate, half buried in gravel, his ears flicking back as he circled. Elena's pulse steadied. This was their element, unhindered by squad movements or dust clouds. He alerted abruptly, sitting sharp, paw tapping the earth with a low whine that cut through the engine hum. Eleanor dropped to one knee, gloved hand sweeping the area. "Positive," she radioed calmly, marking the spot with a chem light. The convoy halted, Mills' team converging from the sides, weapons at ready. Harlan arrived in a golf cart, screeching to a stop, his face taut. "What have you got?" The liaison dismounted swiftly, toolkit in hand, as engineers probed the culvert. Rex held his sit, unflinching amid the gathering boots and murmurs, his dark eyes locked on Elena. The find emerged slowly. A compact device, pressure plate triggered, taped beneath a loose grate. Real, not sim, its wiring crude but lethal, likely planted during a night probe. No insignia, but the embassy briefings had warned of such tactics. Insiders or locals exploiting routine gaps. The liaison confirmed it with a portable scanner, his voice steady over the net. "IED variant, neutralized. Captain Vasquez, your unit just saved the detail." Mills knelt nearby, peering into the hole, his earlier skepticism replaced by a tight-lipped silence. Harlan stood back, arms crossed, as the bomb squad airlifted the device for analysis, rotors thumping overhead like applause. Word rippled through the base as the motorcade proceeded to the annex, the VIP's briefings unfolding under heightened guard. By midday, the ops center hummed with after-action reviews, screens replaying helmet cam footage of Rex's alert. Harlan addressed the assembled officers and NCOs, the room thick with the scent of coffee and printer ink. The detection was textbook, independent protocol executed flawlessly. Embassies commended the unit, with Vasquez's K9 Central. His tone carried reluctant acknowledgement, eyes meeting hers briefly. Mills, seated in the back row, nodded slowly. No barbs this time, as Reyes projected the liaison's follow-up memo. Captain Vasquez's methods upheld security standards. Recommend integration review for future ops. The public affirmation settled over the group like a debrief's closure, soldiers exchanging glances, the earlier mockery dissolved in the face of results. Elena stood at ease, Rex at her side in the kennel annex adjacent to the briefing, his harness removed as she stroked his flank. The cost of her stand lingered. Harlan's guarded posture hinted at internal reports brewing, potential shifts in command dynamics, but the detection had rippled outward, forcing the institution to confront its rigid edges. Whispers in the chow line turned to respect, handlers briefing juniors on solo efficacy, infantry squads incorporating K9 slots in their rotations. Reform stirred quietly, a legacy born from one principal choice. As the sun dipped low, casting golden edges on the tents, Elena led Rex on a perimeter walk, the base winding down with evening stands. The wind carried the faint echo of a distant chopper, a reminder of threats lingering beyond the fences. Her defiance had tested the chain, emerging not as rebellion but as moral anchor, loyalty to partner and duty intertwined. Harlan approached once, halting at a distance. "Well done, Captain. We'll adjust protocols accordingly." The words were formal, but the nod deeper, a fracture mended in silence. The embassy detail's success marked the turning point, her name now synonymous with the quiet strength that upheld the ranks. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elena Vasquez reach those who still believe in honor. The days following the embassy detail unfolded with the measured precision of a post-mission stand-down, Joint Base Balad settling into a rhythm tempered by the weight of what had transpired. Captain Elena Vasquez moved through the base's concrete corridors and dusty paths with the same disciplined stride, but now heads turned in quiet acknowledgement rather than sidelong glances. Rex trotted at her heel, his coat brushed clean from the morning's grooming, the faint scent of kennel hay clinging to him like a badge of the work they'd shared. The air carried the sharp bite of autumn edging into Iraq's endless summer. Cooler winds whispering through the date palms and stirring fine grit against the chain-link fences. In the operations center, the after-action report briefing convened under fluorescent hum. Officers and NCOs gathered around a scarred wooden table strewn with printouts and steaming mugs of field coffee. Major Harlan stood at the head, his uniform crisp, the lines of his face softened by the necessity of adaptation. The embassy liaison's commendation packet lay open before him, Elena's name etched in the executive summary alongside Rex's service number. The detection prevented a potential catastrophe, Harlan stated, his voice carrying the formal cadence of official logs. Captain Vasquez's independent protocol was executed without flaw, validating the request from Baghdad. Unit-wide, this prompts a review of K9 integration standards. Eyes shifted toward Elena, seated midway down the table, her posture erect, hands folded on her lap. Lieutenant Reyes, ever the procedural anchor, projected the revised guidelines on the wall screen. Enhanced autonomy for specialized handlers in high-threat details, balanced with infantry oversight only on call. Sergeant Mills, positioned at the far end, leaned forward, his earlier barbs replaced by a measured nod. "Sir, if I may, our sims showed gaps, but the real op proved the value. Suggest cross-training, infantry observers in K9 drills to build mutual reliance." The proposal hung in the air, a bridge across the old divides, witnessed by the full staff, their silence a collective absorption of the shift. Harlan approved with a curt gesture. "Noted and implemented. Vasquez, you'll lead the initial sessions starting next week." The assignment elevated her role, transforming the Defiance into mentorship, her methods no longer isolated but woven into the unit's fabric. As the meeting adjourned, chairs scraping back in unison, Mills approached her at the door, extending a gloved hand. "Solid work out there, Captain. Rex earned his keep. Taught us something about trust in the field." Elena clasped his hand firmly, the grip brief but genuine. Rex sitting alert between them, his tail giving a single thump against the floor. No apologies, just the quiet reform of respect earned through results. Word of the incident rippled beyond the base, threading into the broader military network via encrypted dispatches and after-action cables to CENTCOM. The embassy's formal letter, now archived in personnel files, became a case study in quiet channels, how a handler's principled stand could influence doctrine without fanfare. Elena felt the change in subtle markers, a junior lieutenant seeking her input on detection protocols during evening chow, the clatter of trays underscoring their exchange, supply requisitions prioritizing K9 gear without the usual delays. Even Harlan's briefings incorporating phrases like autonomous efficacy as standard terminology. The institution, rigid as its hierarchies, bent incrementally, learning from the vulnerability exposed by one dog's nose and one captain's resolve. Afternoons brought the first cross-training evolutions to the yard, the sun slanting low across the barriers and mock grids. Elena harnessed Rex, the leather familiar under her fingers, and directed squads through layered sweeps, infantry holding perimeters while K9 units quartered independently. Mill's team participated without the old smirks, their movements syncing better, radios calling positions with precision. Flank clear, K9 advancing to grid 3. Rex ranged ahead, alerting to planted decoys with unerring sits, his whine prompting efficient recoveries. Elena debriefed afterward under the canvas awning, her voice steady as she outlined scent dynamics and interference pitfalls. Loyalty isn't just to orders. It's to the capability that saves lives, she said, the words landing without preachiness, absorbed into notebooks and murmured agreements. The legacy extended to the kennels, where Elena mentored 2 new handlers, fresh from stateside certification, their dogs, young Belgian Malinois with glossy coats, pacing eagerly in the runs. The air there was thick with the earthy tang of feed and wet fur, shadows lengthening as she demonstrated bonding exercises, silent commands, trust walks in dim light. The chain starts with this, she explained. Kneeling to meet a handler's gaze, Rex demonstrating by pressing flank to her leg. The sessions built quiet confidence, rippling outward as the handlers integrated into patrols, their reports citing improved detection rates. Harlan observed one from the fence line, arms crossed, before nodding approval and departing without comment, a silent concession to the reform she'd sparked. Evenings in her quarters offered reflection amid the base's nocturnal hum. Generators thrumming steadily, distant patrols' headlights sweeping the perimeter like watchful eyes. Elena reviewed logs by desk lamp, Rex curled on his mat, his breathing a rhythmic counterpoint to the fan's whir. The cost lingered in small ways. Harlan's formal distance, a formal inquiry note in her file, prompting a routine IG review, but the transformation outweighed it. Her name, once mocked for acting alone, now symbolized the moral courage that fortified the ranks, duty tempered by conscience, loyalty unbreakable between human and canine. The system, scarred by its own rigidity, had learned to yield, ensuring no threat went unseen. As the full moon rose over Balad, silvering the tents and wire, Elena clipped Rex's leash for a final walk, their shadows merging on the path. The wind carried the faint echo of reveille from another base, a reminder of the endless cycle. In that disciplined silence, integrity stood as the true legacy, quiet, enduring, a beacon for those who followed. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of They Mocked Her for Acting Alone, until the embassy sent a letter with her name on it. See you in the next one.